E-commerce experience is not just about the one transaction and not just about like optimizing, the path to that transaction, but it's part of an experience. You do your research, you read the articles, you communicate with other people on a discussion forum. Maybe you look at the classified ads. You make your decision over time, and then you know where to come and you know how to do the actual shop.
Welcome to Beyond the Pick, a show about robots, supply chain, and how visionary leaders use technology to break through the pack and win. I'm Andre, and on the show today, how Tomas Cervenka started out in the cycling business by creating a community website for cycling enthusiasts at the age of 11 in 1998, before transforming MTBIKER into the largest cycling retailer in Central Europe 20 years later. Success or failure in any business often hinges on the ability to acquire and retain customers. For a long time, e-commerce growth was fueled by cheap Facebook ads and rising market penetration. But after a massive boom, the market turned post-COVID. Growth came down, new privacy restrictions permanently reduced the effectiveness of ads, and costs rose across the board. What followed was a washout, with many previously successful D2C businesses going bankrupt and others becoming permanently smaller and less profitable. The exceptions, as is often the case, were those companies that managed to build outsized market influence to continue efficiently acquiring and retaining customers. But you don't need to be Amazon to do that. In fact, Tomas did just that with MTBIKER by taking a radically different approach to building an e-commerce business. For now, what you need to know about Tomas is that he's a technologist first and a cycling enthusiast second. And when he launched MTBIKER at the age of 11 in 1998, he could never have imagined what it would become 20 years later.
It was a time when we did cycle a lot. We did mountain biking. We went to races in Slovakia, in Czech Republic, and there was a small community of enthusiasts and racers and active mountain bikers that really wanted a place where they can talk to each other and where they can share photos and classified ads and communicate. So as that didn't exist, Facebook didn't exist. MySpace really wasn't that popular. It was all maybe done over ICQ or IRC channels. So the idea was to create a website. So obviously it started as a very simple static website, and over time, as more features were added, more sort of community requests were granted and programmed, the website became much more popular and people started using it on a daily basis.
And was that the only website you launched? I imagine, as an 11-year-old back in 1998, you must have been quite a technology geek.
It started with with one book about PHP. So basically, as you learn programming, you normally would have to have some exercises that you work on. And ideally, you have a project in mind that actually create something that has value rather than just do the exercises for the sake of exercises. So MTBIKER was that project. But yes, you're right. I mean, it wasn't the only one. Over the next 3-4 years, I've created a few. One which was essentially a more generic portal or information website, similar to Yahoo of those years. And I've created an eShop platform as well, actually, when I was 15 or 16. But rather than run the eShop, I sold the basically license for using that platform. And it was very simple, rudimentary, but it did the job. So I've presumably helped create a few dozen very early eShops in Slovakia with that platform.
Got it. And so, fast forward a few years, you went to study computer science at Cambridge, and then what?
So after university, I moved to London. So I had an internship after my second year in Google, and I thought that that's where I want to be. But I didn't choose the right year because that was 2008. There was a bit of a market panic. There was a hiring freeze. So rather than join Google, I joined a startup in London as a software engineer. And over time, I spent 7 years in there. Went from a software engineer to CTO. We built the company from 9 people to almost 250. We were focused on data processing, data mining, and profiling. So basically creating psychological and psychographic profiles for internet users, and use that for ad targeting, for financial risk analysis, things that are fairly common these days on the back end of targeting and credit card fraud or credit card applications. But I think we were a little bit early. There was a lot more investment needed in the company, so it didn't really go become as successful as we really wanted to and planned. So basically 2014, because of various things, the investor kind of didn't have the money to really fund the company any further, and it got sold in pieces. So not a very successful exit event for me. But at the time, I was back in Slovakia, creating an engineering team for the company as the plug was pulled essentially. So I stayed in Slovakia and really started focusing on MTBIKER, which was my really like side project, which I was working on over the evenings and weekends, and was it was growing every year, but it wasn't a business, right? It was making some money of ads. We were able to pay a few editors / content creators, and it was living, but it wasn't really making any money. So 2014, we decided to switch the business model to e-commerce and use the traffic and the community that we have built over those years, and to offer them our basically range of products that we can get from local or European suppliers. And so we did that. We did that sort of step, and we've been growing ever since as an e-commerce business.
Did you ever have a vision for MTBIKER before that, or was it more opportunistic when you decided to make the switch?
It was, let's say, opportunistic / calculated. Obviously, in 1998, when I was starting the website, there was no vision, no strategy, no nothing. It was a project, and I had no idea where what it will turn into. 2014, it was basically a strategic decision where we said, well, the ad-based model is going to probably decay a little bit because of social media, cheap content that is being created. Essentially, we have to grow the viewership or the traffic to the website to stay in the same place in terms of revenues. So that's not a really great place to be. And we said, well, we have the community, we have the traffic, we have the attention of people. It's a niche market. It's cycling. We understand the products. We understand what those people need. So let's try a different business model. And e-commerce obviously made a lot of sense for us. So essentially, it was opportunistic.
And I imagine there were some people in the community who weren't particularly happy about, shifting towards more monetization and so forth. How did you balance sort of maintaining the community while also building a business around it?
Well, we actually started doing a lot more for the community because as we turned into an e-commerce business, we started generating more money and profit, and that a large part of that profit actually goes back into community. I mean, right now you can essentially say it's part of our branding or marketing, but we do support a lot of races, a lot of individuals and teams. We do support the marking of cycling trails in Slovakia. We do all sorts of lobbying, not on the government level, but in terms of like local communities. And obviously, we're investing into the website, into the community features that we have. So I would say 95% of people are after a few months, they realized that actually this is going to be better, and they're happy. There's a few people that it took a lot longer to convince, and obviously there are some people that feel like we're now very commercial and we sold our souls. But yeah, I mean that's a very small minority.
And what I find super interesting is that even today, if you go to mtbiker.sk, it's actually not the e-commerce shop that you see first. It's a magazine, and then there's a forum where people can ask questions or share their cycling experiences, even, a marketplace for secondhand resellers. And you do see, elements of the eShop here and there, but it definitely feels very balanced. And I imagine that's intentional.
It is. And it would be very difficult for us to do the switch from a magazine / portal to an eShop and just kind of like replace the community features with the eShop features, from one day to another. So over the time, we figured out that it's easier to really integrate the e-commerce experience into the content rather than to switch it around and the eShop becoming the central point and the content becoming secondary. We are relatively large in Slovakia right now, so maybe it actually feels outdated. But to me, it still makes sense because for me the whole eShop or e-commerce experience is not just about the one transaction and not just about like optimizing the path to that transaction. Obviously, it is very important to to look at your conversion rates and make sure that the shopping is as easy as possible. But it's part of an experience. You do your research, you read the articles, you communicate with other people on a discussion forum. Maybe you look at the classified ads. You make your decision over time, and then you know where to come and you know how to do the actual shop. So we're not really focused on that sort of very quick, very easy transaction. We focused on building a long-term customer relationship, and that actually is working for us because our lifetime value seems to be increasing every year, and the loyalty of our customers seems to be real, right? I mean, obviously there are things in place like loyalty rewards program that help it, but compared to other e-shops that I can see, I think the people are returning a lot more than other e-shops. Like our returning customer rate is like 78 to 80% of our revenue is from returning customers, which many other e-shops are really struggling to get to.
Especially with a product that's relatively non-recurring, right? If you're selling supplements, someone's buying that every month, 2 months, but cycling parts.
Well, you would think that, and that's interesting. That especially the retailers that focus on selling you bikes, like complete bikes. Yes, I mean you buy a bike if you're a very active person and you have the money. You maybe buy a bike every 2 years. If you're less of an enthusiast, maybe you buy a bike every 4 to 5 years. That's sort of like the life cycle typically. But our focus is mainly on the enthusiasts and those active people, and you normally spend 3-4 times as much on parts, clothing, nutrition, accessories, that sort of stuff, because you wear the tires, you wear the brake pads, you need your new jersey, you need the helmet to match. Then there's a new upgrade on the derailleur, so you want to buy that one, and then you need a new chain, all these things, and so over time you realize that actually you're spending quite a lot of money on that hobby. That's our target audience.
And so speaking of content, so you have a mix of personal blogs, trail videos, how-to videos, product reviews, and it's really incredible, like the amount of content you put out. You even have an option where people can submit their own article for you to publish, potentially, and so forth. How did you preserve the quality of the content while scaling it to such a large extent?
Well, most of the content is created by our own internal people who sort of over the time really focused on just doing that, so just creating content, and we don't really do content for the sake of SEO or that we need to cover this keyword and we just need to create content for that keyword or for that topic. All of our articles are it's obviously a mix, but it can be reports from races that our internal people went to and actually participated in. It can be articles about helping you how to do proper training, how to what sort of nutrition to use during your race or during the training for your race. Maybe it's unboxing and tests of various bikes or bike parts. But as you said, we also allow the community to publish their own articles, which are typically again reports from races or reports from extraordinary experiences like 1,000-kilometer ride or a 48-hour sort of adventure or something like that, which people enjoy, and it creates this sort of motivational, but real motivational content for people that helps them to either get better at cycling or get more into cycling or more into active lifestyle. And that's kind of the whole point of what we're trying to also achieve, that we're trying to make people more active, because obviously when they're more active, they're more healthy. There's all sorts of benefits from that perspective, but also from a business perspective, they do tend to spend more or buy more cycling related things when they're active, when they actually cycle a lot more.
It's a win-win.
That's what we're trying to do.
And I imagine there's a lot of obviously benefits to that strategy. SEO, which you mentioned, even if it's unintentional, I imagine you guys rank very highly. Brand, staying top of mind and so forth. Incredibly, you guys didn't do any performance marketing until 2020 or 2021, right? Which I don't want to say is unheard of in e-commerce, but it's certainly rare, right?
That's right. I mean, it's a result. It's a direct result of that sort of community building over those years. So 1998. So that's like 26 years right now. So it took us 15 years to build a community, build the organic traffic before we could launch an e-commerce or e-shop without actually paying for performance ads. So it's not an overnight thing. Obviously, it takes time to build that attention and that organic community. But once you have it definitely helps. So yes, until the COVID years, we didn't really, actually even like well into COVID years, we didn't really have to spend any money on performance campaigns. I mean, by current standards, you would say that we spent a lot on branding, because again, creating content, sponsoring things, sponsoring events, it could be considered as part of your marketing or branding efforts. We didn't really consider that line in our P&L to be marketing, but it essentially was. So we started 100% marketing. Now our mix is basically 60-40, maybe 50-50 in certain years, especially when we are extending our reach to countries outside of Slovakia. You have to start with more performance marketing, especially in the first years. So I would say 50-50 is our split these days.
Yeah, and actually you're actively expanding now into Czech Republic, other countries where you obviously don't have the benefit of 26 years of community building. Do you find that makes your job harder, or what is your strategy in these countries?
The simple answer is yes. The strategy is to do the same or similar sorts of community effort in all the countries that we expand to. But we know we don't have 26 years to do it. So we need to sort of fuel it a little bit with performance marketing. But at the same time, it's also going to, or still going to be about building and finding the community, investing into it in terms of, again, sponsorship, events, partnerships, maybe trail building, that sort of stuff. And using these activities to help us build the brand in those countries.
Is there a framework for community building? I guess to put it another way, if you're talking to a new e-commerce entrepreneur, how would you advise them to build a community?
Be part of it. That's what we are. I mean, it's not that there are some outside people who are not into cycling trying to like somehow use a framework to manage or create a community. We're all part of it. Like there's 120 people right now in MTBIKER. All of them are either cyclists or outdoor enthusiasts. Skiers and hikers and mountaineers, etc. So if you're part of it, if you attend the races, if you are seen in this community rides, if you are helping your local team with stuff, then you are part of the community, and then you can use also the money that the company generates to really help and accelerate that sort of branding effort. So I don't really think that we don't have a framework for building a community, but it it needs to be believable, and it's only believable if you are part of it, and if the people that work for your company and manage your company are part of that community.
So you're primarily a reseller of third-party cycling brands, and online competition is just one click away, right? Anyone can copy paste the product ID or the name into Google, and immediately they have a comparison of all the other competitors or websites selling the same product. How do you avoid it becoming basically a race to the bottom with your competition?
That's a good question, and yes, I mean we are in a market where even within Slovakia, which is a very small country, very small market, you have a lot of competition for all the popular cycling products, whether it's parts or whole bikes. Then obviously within EU you can buy anything from any EU country. So especially Czech Republic and Germany seem to be very strong in terms of selling into Slovakia, and for various reasons you can often find cheaper items in Germany or Czech Republic or Poland for that matter. So there's a few arguments. Obviously, you ideally want to buy from a local e-shop because of the convenience in terms of the quick shipping and cheap shipping, better returns and easier kind of communication with the e-commerce. So that's kind of like the basic. But for us, it's really about explaining to our customers that, again, it's not just a transaction. It's not just you giving us money, we give you the product, and we're done. It's a relationship. It's a long-term thing, and showing them that the money they're giving us is actually being at least partially used to help them in terms of better enjoying their hobby, helping the community to build better trails or have events that they enjoy, etc., or create content that they actually consume and enjoy. So even though we are on average more expensive than our competition, I think people do prefer to shop with us because of all the other benefits. And again, they understand that the company has to make a little bit of money to be able to support that community and those efforts.
And you mentioned shipping. Actually, incredibly, you guys are one of the few e-com stores outside of grocery which does shipping in 24 hours for free, obviously subject to a minimum order value, which, as I said, is very rare. How do you achieve that?
So over the years, essentially we started as a store in a small village called Hrádok near Piešťany. Probably for the international audience of this podcast won't say much, but it's a lovely small village under some lovely hills, so it's very close to like mountain trails or bike trails. So we started with a store, and our first warehouse was 25 square meters, so a very small room in that store. And as we grew, we sort of had to expand the footprint of our warehouse, but our focus has always been on shipping things quickly from our own warehouse. So we have always achieved that by having the right technological process and having the right human process to be able to ship within 1 day, and obviously have the right logistic partners to be able to deliver within 1 day. So our typical experience would be that if you order within or before 12 p.m. or in some cases even like 2 or 3 p.m., you have your product on the next day. We actually even have same-day delivery into our stores. So if you order before 12 p.m., you have your products by 3 p.m. in one of our 4 stores across Slovakia and Czech Republic right now as well. But just to go back to your question, as we grew, obviously having a larger warehouse becomes more complex to manage, becomes more complex to run. So we use a lot of data analysis and prediction analytics to have the right stuff in the warehouse at the right time without getting too overstocked. And obviously, as we grew, we had to move into a much bigger warehouse and realize we need automation and robotics to really help us be more effective. So it's not just about human pickers and human runners in the warehouse. We still do manual packing and picking, but we use BrightPick to help us store and retrieve items in the warehouse.
And do you find that this 24-hour delivery, especially nowadays in the world of Temu and people preferring, not everyone, but certainly for some of their purchases, cheaper but slower delivery. Do you find that the 24 hours is actually a competitive advantage?
Definitely. For some people, it's crucial. Again, we know with mountain biking or cycling, you often find that you're missing something for your evening ride or for your weekend race, and you find it on a Thursday. Right, and then you can't do the race without a new tire, or you've worn your brake pads, or your derailleur broke, or you need a tube or something. So either you need to get around the city and look for that component that you're missing, but with cycling, it's you have so many bike brands, so many different standards, so many different components and brands that it's almost impossible for any single bike shop retailer to have things in store which are compatible with what you have. So it's, I think, the only way to do it is to have a large centralized warehouse where you have a large selection. We have 200,000 SKUs in our product catalog. 70,000 of them are in the warehouse, like in stock. So for those people, it's very important that if they order that thing, it's delivered on the same day or the next day, because otherwise they can't enjoy their hobby and they become very unhappy. So yes, it's a competitive advantage, say compared to even those German or Polish e-shops, which take 1 or 2 or 3 days longer than us to deliver. Obviously, Chinese, that's a different story. But normally Chinese e-shops do not sell branded products. They sell, copycats. And when you're riding bikes, you're going to a race, you do prefer the branded one, even though it's a lot more expensive, because you want reliability, the compatibility. And when you're going downhill 70 kilometers per hour, you really want something that has been properly tested and has had QA done on it. But I'm not sure whether this is the same in different or all the markets, whether it's the same in the US. But there are e-shops like Alza in Czech Republic and Slovakia that have really started pushing on the idea that things can be delivered pretty much straight away. Obviously, Amazon does that elsewhere. So it's also part of that expectation of customers that things will suddenly appear, the next day or even like in the evening. So you can't beat, the logistics of Alza in Slovakia or Czech Republic, but you can become or can get fairly close and manage those expectations of those customers.
And I think that's what sets you apart, right? It's one thing when you're Amazon and you're able to offer this to customers. It's another thing when you're, quote unquote, just another e-commerce shop, but you're able to, compete and offer a similar value proposition. And I think you guys are also unique in the sense that you do your own fulfillment, not just your own warehouse, but you even have your own vans for some deliveries. Was that a strategic decision from the very beginning when you launched in 2014? Or was that more driven by the fact that the 3PL industry wasn't really developed in this region back then?
Well, we... in terms of the decision to run our own warehouse, that was a strategic decision from the start. Or actually, it was more of a sort of organic, progression of what we were doing. So we started shipping from the store. We created a small warehouse out of shipping containers, which were adjusted for the purpose. And then we were adding more shipping containers, and eventually we ran out of space in the lot that we had. the actual vans actually became a necessity when we opened our first store outside of Hradok, that little village, which was in Bratislava, and we really wanted to do the same day delivery, and also we realized that we're shipping. Even from day one, we were shipping like 150 orders per day into that store in Bratislava. So just doing the calculation, it's a lot cheaper to have your own van and a driver than pay a third-party company with that sort of volume, right? Because if you're shipping a few, obviously it doesn't make sense. But if you can fill the whole van pretty much every single day, then it makes sense to have your own. So that's how it started. And that's basically created the same day delivery possibility for us. And so with every store that we open these days, our strategy is to be able to do the same day delivery with our own vans. But as we are growing larger, we're opening stores a bit further from our warehouse. That becomes a little bit more either expensive or difficult. So we'll see whether we can do same day for all our stores. But right now we do same day for all stores.
And did you ever consider outsourcing your fulfillment? Maybe, for example, between moving to a larger warehouse instead of doing that, finding a partner?
Honestly, no. My view, and I think our strategic view is to really have control over our processes. And I believe that if you're an e-commerce company, the logistics and the whole process of buying and selling and shipping goods is core to what you do. So unless you really want to say that you are just quote unquote just a marketing company, that you're marketing products or you're just creating products and you kind of outsource the whole logistic process to someone else, I think it is core to what you do, and I view that as being a crucial part of our process. So I wouldn't want to rely on someone else. And I think at least in Slovakia, the fulfillment sector is not as mature maybe as it is in US or elsewhere. So the reliability, from what I can see and what I have seen, hasn't been as great. And there are times in the year where maybe you need the reliability to be at the highest, and actually there's a big problem because everyone else has a peak at the same time as you do, and something happens, and we've seen delays of 10 days or something like that in terms of shipping, which for us would be a massive problem. So honestly, we haven't really thought about outsourcing that.
It makes sense. You're looking for ways to differentiate yourself outside of pure brand or marketing or pricing, which logistics. And I imagine without having your own fulfillment, this reliable 24-hour delivery, as you just said, wouldn't be possible. And I imagine that's also one of the reasons why you decided to invest in robotics as well.
Yes. So that was part of our move to a much larger warehouse, or much larger by our standards means 5,000 square meters. We moved from a warehouse which was about 1,200, and it was completely manual, and it was working quite well. But realized that when you get into a much larger warehouse, the amounts of steps that people need to take on a daily basis to store and retrieve the items, it grows quadratically. And even in the small warehouse, people were doing 12 to 15k kilometers per day in terms of their steps and finding stuff. So we realized actually we either need a lot more people, or people they need to become ultra runners to actually
or get them unicycles.
Yes, yeah. So we wanted to really automate the simplest and also the most humanly difficult or challenge or exhausting processes, which for us is the act of taking a tote, putting it in a rack, and then retrieving it, and that what robotics is actually really good at. It's not so complex that there's a lot of room for error. At the same time, it's replacing those sort of manually exhausting and repetitive tasks. So we were looking to really automate that, and Brightpick for us the most flexible and easiest to install solution in the new warehouse that we have rented.
So speaking of automation, labor cost in Slovakia is actually fairly low, right? Obviously, the biggest benefit of automation is labor savings. But because of that, I imagine, for example, the ROI purely on labor that you would get in Slovakia is lower than in Germany or in the US.
Yes, yeah.
So when you were, let's say, thinking about automating, how did you think about the ROI?
I think that there's 2 or 3 parts to that. One is yes, you can. I was calculating the cost per pick or cost per order with using human pickers and using an automated system, comparing that, but not comparing it on a current basis, but also obviously looking into the future. Yes, the labor costs in Slovakia are, compared to other countries, relatively low, but they grow every year, and the pressure is going to be there, and it's going to grow. There's labor shortages, and that's probably an even bigger problem than actual labor costs. So when you either needs to hire 25 people for a work shift, or have automation where you don't need to hire as many, you can maybe use your current workforce and just reshuffle that a little bit. It's always better to rely on technology than rely on those people becoming or being in the market. Obviously, running around the warehouse and picking stuff is not the most intellectually challenging job, so not a lot of people really want to do it. So part of that concept, or part of the idea of doing automation and getting into robotics, was to just replace those sort of very repetitive and unchallenging tasks, and have people do the more creative / complex tasks themselves. So as part of that move, we really didn't have to fire anyone. We just people that were doing processes or jobs that were replaced by robots, they just got relocated to different types of processes, and either became packers, or they started doing more administrative work in terms of ordering products, etc. So for a lot of people, actually, it created a way to progress in the company into different roles.
Yeah. And I imagine that there's also big benefits to scalability from automation,
Yes.
whether it's easily being able to add shifts or add additional robots.
That is definitely something that we haven't really properly used yet. The fact that the whole system can pretty much operate 24/7. We're still operating one work shift, which is 8 hours, maybe on peak days it's a bit extended, and we get part-timers or external people to help us, but we normally ship 8 to 12 hours per day. The whole ROI calculation becomes a lot clearer when you're running 2 shifts or 3 shifts. So we're not there yet, but it definitely was part of the calculation that over the course of that sort of 5-year calculation window, we will get into at least 2 work shifts a day.
You mentioned stores. So now you have 4, including your first in Czech Republic. And actually, you were an early mover into stores, right? I think you opened your first store just a few months after launching the e-commerce business, as you mentioned in Hradok. I imagine that was a risky decision to make back then, because it required capital, which you could have maybe invested in the e-commerce business instead.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to do that?
A lot of the things that even from the very beginning of MTBIKER are, so to say, community-led or requested. So we get a lot of feedback from our users, from our customers. And this was also driven by that we started the e-commerce by actually using essentially a fulfillment partner, or pretty much using drop shipping, right? But we very quickly realized that we need a physical place for people, for the customers where they can come and see us, come and see the products, come and try the bikes, because you can ship a bike in a box, but the experience is very different to an experience where you ship the bike to the store. It gets set up for you. You come there, you see it, you touch it, you try it, and then we set it up for your personal preferences and height, etc. You can even do bike fitting, so proper professional measurement and setup of the bike. There's some additional services we can do for you at the store. So we really wanted that, and that's why we invested into a brick and mortar store in Radok. We actually built the building from the ground. It was actually it was literally a greenfield project. So that was our first, and the next ones again are driven by our customer requests and obviously data. We are opening stores where it makes sense for us logistically, but mainly it makes sense for us in terms of demand. So where we ship the most orders, where we see the most sort of demand from customers. Obviously looking at competition as well, but that's not really a big part of our sort of analysis in terms of locations.
And incredibly, MTBIKER actually never had a down year, even post-COVID, when a lot of cycling businesses, they saw their revenue decline by 20, 30, 40% versus the peak years. And I imagine the physical footprint really helped with that.
Must have. I think the community and the loyalty of the customers helped with that the most. You can attribute that to branding efforts or loyalty program or whatever you can attribute it to, but that definitely helped. We before COVID we were used to 40-50% growth per year. So COVID accelerated that to 80-90%. So we were almost doubling the company over those 2 years of COVID, which obviously was a massive change in terms of how we operated, where we operated from, also the payroll and all the other costs related. So when that sort of frenzy ended, and we knew it's going to end, like we realized it's not going to last forever. But I think everyone in the cycling industry kind of underestimated the correction. They were more optimistic than they should have been, so right now the industry is still struggling with overstock and lower margins, and there's some consolidation that is happening, and it is going to happen over the next few years. And I think we were probably smart enough to realize that it's not going to be as optimistic, and we were managing our stock and also our costs in such a way that when the slowdown in growth happens, we're okay with it, and that's what happens. But even though we had obviously had to invest in terms of performance marketing to really be able to grow. I mean, if we didn't invest and we were struggling in terms of our growth or even declining, obviously we would be in some trouble as well right now. But given that we had the community, we had the loyal customers, we were investing into marketing, and we were growing in terms of also the product range and stores. It helped us still grow at 25-30% even during the post-COVID correction years in terms of the cycling industry.
And I guess in the age of new privacy restrictions on ads and generally slower e-commerce growth or even flat, do you believe that businesses can still succeed as pure play e-com stores today, or is omni-channel really the future?
It's a good question. I think that it's becoming a lot more difficult to be pure play e-com, which is based purely on performance, especially if you just want to be a reseller of other product or other brands and you want to base your model on performance. I would say that that's not going to work anymore, because you have marketplaces which are always going to outbid you in terms of performance and margins. You have omni-channel players, which are going to always be better in terms of brand recognition, in terms of services that they can offer. So either you find a niche that no one else has found yet, but that's also a relatively short-term strategy because people will get into it. Or you focus on brand and you focus on being unique and creating a loyal customer base. I think that's the only strategy you can have, and still be competitive with marketplaces like Amazon or Allegro or the other ones that are coming, to your market or are already in your market. And I think having a niche which is large enough to make sense in terms of business, but small enough to not make a lot of sense for the big players, it's probably crucial, right? Because cycling is actually quite challenging in terms of logistics, in terms of services, in terms of the product range. As I was saying, we have 300,000 SKUs, and I'm sure that bigger German players have maybe like 1 million SKUs. So the variety is huge. You have to understand what you're selling. You have to understand what you're buying. You have to be able to ship items which are 2 grams, the wire ends, all the way to e-bikes which weigh 30 kilos, are very difficult to ship, or even bike racks which have 45 kilos, etc. You have to be able to store it, to ship it, and that's quite difficult. It's a lot more difficult than selling clothing or shoes. Maybe that's also a barrier to entry for some other larger players, which can, I imagine that they're looking at different categories and are sort of weighing the difficulty of that category with the margins and the market size. And for them, cycling or this sort of active outdoor industry is a lot more challenging than other categories. Yeah. So choose your niche, and definitely omni-channel is the way to go.
Yeah, there's a quote, I think, by Paul Graham, a US VC investor, but he said, do things that don't scale, because then that means others aren't going to copy you. Yeah. Right?
Obviously, there are a few winners in each market, and if you can be the winner, then obviously that's the right strategy. But it's challenging to as a small company in a small market to compete against the giants that are really pretty much owning the e-commerce, the general e-commerce in EU or US.
Yeah. Well, it definitely sounds like you built a winner on very stable, sustainable foundations over more than 26 years. Definitely not a one-trick pony. So I wish you the best of luck. I'm sure we're gonna see MTBIKER continue growing and really becoming a Slovak success story across all Europe, hopefully. So
hopefully European success story.
European success story, exactly. So thanks a lot for your time and good luck.
Thank you.
Beyond the Pick is brought to you by BrightPick. We care deeply about improving supply chain resilience, and we hope these stories inspire you to view your supply chain as a source of strength, not risk. To learn more about how we improve supply chain resilience, visit brightpick.ai, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy this content. See you next time.